Hello, welcome to another episode of the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition Small Business Live Forum. I'm your host, David Dadekian, a small business owner here in Rhode Island. Just like so many of the people out there, we need a lot of great small business help. And this week, in lieu of an elected official, which we've had plenty on, we'll have plenty more. We've got someone from SCORE on. We've got Jeff Bodenstab on from SCORE. He's going to be talking to us about what SCORE is, what do they do, what do they offer, and all sorts of things. So if you don't know what SCORE is, it is the Service Corps of Retired Executives, but it's not really retired executives anymore. So let's bring Jeff on and talk about what SCORE is and what they can do for our small business community. Welcome,
Hi,
Jeff.
David.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. So yeah, it's not really the retired executives anymore, huh? It's any executive who wants to be a mentor, right?
Yeah, it's back in the old days. The concept was that people who had worked many decades in business had this great host of knowledge that they could share with younger people who were just starting up, and that's where the concept of retired executives. And originally, that's pretty much what it was. But just like the world has changed, right? Now it's people who are between jobs or perhaps are not quite retired but want to give back to their community. It's a very diverse group of people, men, women, all ethnic backgrounds, and also some various language backgrounds as well. So it's really changed quite a bit, both in Rhode Island and nationally in the last last decade or two.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think let's touch on that. So it's a national organization. It's a nonprofit,
Yes.
Funded by the SBA, I believe. Is 100% funded by the SBA or?
Not 100%, but yeah, it's a closely associated with the Small Business Administration. But we also because we're an independent nonprofit, we do occasional fundraisers and things like that, and get a little bit of funding from other areas as well. But yes, SBA is a primary sponsor.
Excellent. So yeah, so I want to for folks out there watching, it's not funded through your taxpayer dollars or anything like that. It's a great organization of volunteers, which is really much like the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition is a group of volunteers. So that's
Yes.
fantastic to hear.
And I think your buck because they don't pay us.
That's what I was trying to get to. I mean, it is a lot of bang for your buck. It really is. I mean, when you read through the resources available on the website, and there's a lot of posts and there's a library of things on the website that you could find. We should say it's score.org is the national website, and the Rhode Island chapter is ri.score.org. And also, I think people should know, for all the griping and grumbling we get around here in Rhode Island sometimes about not being a very business friendly state. The SCORE chapter in Rhode Island is the number one in New England and one of the tops in the country. Yes,
we were very honored and excited to have won a national award just recently for the work that's been going on, and it's a good size. It's about 60 individuals in the organization, covering Rhode Island and South Coast Massachusetts.
That's right. I should note, for those of you watching this live on Facebook, while they cover the entire state of Rhode Island, they also cover Bristol County in Mass. I saw that on the Rhode Island website. So let's dive right into it. What does SCORE do? What can they do? For small businesses.
So basically, three things. We have resources online which are available. Things like business plan templates and marketing strategy templates and those sort of things. The second thing we do is events. And so, for instance, right now we're running a series called How To, and this is about once a week, and it's very specific kinds of problems that people face, like how to enter their revenue in QuickBooks, or how to read a balance sheet properly to really run your business, or how to build an effective email database. Real hands-on kind of stuff, which is kind of we got famous for that back during the pandemic when we helped people with the PPP programs and the EIDL programs, and it wasn't like a lot of hand waving about things in general. It was okay now. on line 7, you fill this in, and in line 8, you fill this in, right? It was a real step-by-step explanation of how to get things done. So, with that's approach we take. We also run a Providence Library series in the spring and fall that is specifically aimed at startups to give them a lot of the tools and techniques that they need to get their ball rolling. So that's the second thing, is these events that we do. But the thing that we're most known for is one-on-one mentoring, and that's where you go to the website, you put in you just mentioned, you put in a request and said, to ask for to describe the kind of help you'd like to get. And then you're assigned a mentor. You're assigned a person like myself who's gone through, who has a lot of business background, and then decades of experience, and has been through a training program to learn how to be a good mentor. And for no charge at all, we work with you answering your questions. And that could be a very short-term thing. I've had kind of one and done where somebody says, "Gee, I can't decide whether I should be an LLC or a sole proprietorship, or how I should incorporate." And in one session, answer the questions, all set. And then I've had people I've worked with for over 2 years, and we meet every 2 to 3 weeks, and I become sort of almost like an advisor to their company, and that's also very common. So it's really all about the needs of the individual, what we can do to help. And again, it's all volunteer, so there's never any charge involved.
That sounds fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your background. What's your business background?
So, as a lot of the people in the business, or I'm sorry, a lot of the people at SCORE, I had a fair amount of experience in small business. And a lot of the people there have, and what is a little different for me is that a lot of people came from backgrounds in finance, accounting, insurance, administration, HR. By the way, just a wonderfully diverse group of people. And let me backtrack a second to say that when you put in that request and you tell us what you're looking for, they try to match you up with somebody who has some experience in that specific area. And that's one of the benefits of having such a broad range of skills and experience. What's a little different about me, and which worked out, I think, well, is that I have my background's in marketing, and not, there aren't that many people necessarily that have marketing backgrounds. So I tend to get a lot of the marketing requests. Now, actually, when I joined, I was one of the few people. Now we're up to probably about 4 or 5 people at SCORE with a marketing background. So the reason I went to SCORE, right, was I had worked all my life, both in small companies and in large companies, helping build businesses as small as just a few people up to, much bigger businesses, and then and having some success at that. And I was approaching retirement. I was partially retired, and I, looking for some way to give back. And I found SCORE, and I said, "Gee, that's, helping small businesses grow. That's what I've been doing all my life." I was getting paid for it now, I'll do it without getting paid, right, in retirement. But it was sort of the perfect segue for me personally. Also, I will admit that I'm not a Rhode Island native, but my wife is. We lived in Boston for many decades, and I have noticed, you may have noticed this too, that Rhode Islanders, boy, when they get the chance to come back to Rhode Island, they do. They're like those turtles that always go back to the beach there where they were born, right? So my wife
plan it, but I too. I lived in New York for 13 years and ended up back here too.
Yeah. Well, it really says a lot for the area, doesn't it? That people really desire to come home. And so we came back just actually before we retired, and we live in the Providence area now, and have, by the way, have five daughters,
Oh,
all
wow.
married, all and on our seventh grandchild now. So almost all living in the
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
I have two daughters. I'm not sure I could imagine five. Wow, good for you.
Well, wait till you have seven grandkids, then you'll really have.
Oh boy. But you've got the time to mentor, which is nice.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
the
It's a
good part about it.
wonderful experience.
Yeah. So you said, you touched on a little bit. Any really sized business is eligible here. I mean, really, one up to, I mean, obviously not large corporations, but any size small business is really eligible for using Score. Yes.
Yeah, the eligibility is completely open, including, and this was actually a bit of a surprise to me, a lot of people who actually didn't have a business yet, right? Who were really just
Ah,
aspiring to start a business, right? I would say maybe, I don't know the exact number, but I don't know. I'll just take a wild guess and say maybe a quarter of the people that we talk to are people who would like to start a business, have an idea, or just started to create something. Maybe they've have a hobby that they think is business worthy, and they come to us for advice on how they might make that transition into a real business. Or maybe it's a side gig, right? They're still have a
sure.
full-time job. They start doing something on the side. They think this is something that they could build into a business. That's very typical. So that's on that end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, oh geez, I would say kind of a large business would be, say, somebody who has multiple locations, maybe multiple retail locations, multiple service locations, multiple stores across Rhode Island, maybe some sort of overnight. I'm sorry, dry cleaning or marts or something like
Okay.
that, and is looking for assistance. So that's sort of the range. And then every once in a while, you get a much bigger business. Sometimes it's because they started as a smaller business, but really like the Score relationship. They really like their Score mentor, and they've grown quite a bit. But they are they really appreciate that, and they want to maintain the relationship. And by
That's
the way, let
interesting.
me just add, I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me just add, and also a fair number of online businesses too. I kind of implied brick and mortar, but a good portion of our businesses are people who have online stores, and or sell online, market online, and of course, being with my marketing background, I do mentor a fair number of people about social media and doing online sales and marketing and channel development.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I would imagine, especially after the last 2 years, online is
Yes.
more and more all the time. So I've certainly helped some businesses get online in the last 2 years. So it's clear that's. I mean, we've always known it, but it's become more important to the community. I think in the last 2 years.
Yep.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on this, but I mean, are we looking, mostly at newer businesses? But you do have some older businesses, as you mentioned, some that have been well established. What do you feel? Is it a lot of basics questions, or do you get into much more complex issues that are part of older businesses?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it is a real mix, kind of as I implied there, that you're seeing everything from somebody who literally is just starting, hasn't even started a business, and is trying to figure out how to start a business, to people who've been in business a while, and are trying to make a transition, or dealing with problems that they haven't had before, or struggling for one reason or another. Which, by the way, that struggling may be just inherent in the business, but it also could be something to do with the way the environment has changed. So a
Sure.
perfect example of that was during the pandemic, right? We had some of our biggest years ever, as you can imagine, helping people through the various government relief programs, helping people, pivot their business, helping people move from, online. I mean, sorry, from either brick and mortar or face to face to online business. So a lot of times there are things that are sort of not foisted upon them, but they're dealing with, which are not internal, but they're dealing with external factors and how to address those. So yeah, it's a pretty big variety, and there's a certain consistency, in the sense that early businesses or startups tend to have one set of questions, whereas
Right.
sometimes, the ones that have been in business for a long time might have different kinds of questions. I have these 4 locations. Do I want to add a 5th location? Right. I have an opportunity to do this, to make this change, or to add this, or to hire new people, looking for input on how to do it. And of course, as you get into more of the finance and accounting, some of my associates are much more finance and accounting oriented. As the business grows, that becomes when you're a real small business, frankly, you can do a lot sort of seat of the pants, because you have a feel for the business. You're personally involved in everything. But as the business grows, you aren't always present with everything that's going on. So you need to rely more on accounting and business, and I'm sorry, accounting and finance and HR
Right.
principles, and as a business grows.
No, it makes perfect sense. Absolutely. I could certainly see, it's tiered. Asking, at a certain level, you're asking for help for score, and then at a certain other level, you're hiring, an HR person for yourself, or a bookkeeper,
Right.
things of that nature. Right.
And
Um,
by the way, let me add something that kind of a follow up to that, and that is that we are very, not just open, but what we like to do is, as people's questions evolve over time, we'll actually evolve the mentors in the organization. So, for instance, I might start with somebody who has a marketing question, but then, now they've got some problems with QuickBooks. I'll hand them off to a different mentor who's a QuickBooks expert, so
that's
that
great.
you're always dealing with somebody with the real experience. And I have several actual examples of people who've gone through exactly that kind of thing, and then might even come back to me later on with some things, or we'll team up sometimes. Right. I'll start with somebody. I'll bring in a second person who has expertise in a very specialized area, and then they'll come back to working with me on some of the original stuff. So, yeah, always want to tune the mentors to the needs of the audience. And we used to do that also. We also used to take physical location a little more into consideration. If somebody was located in South Coast Massachusetts, we would have them meet with the person there, or down in Kent County, or in South County. But now, because so much is being done online, that's less of an issue. We still will take that into consideration, but it actually sort of frees up that constraint to allow us to be more focused just on the top of mind questions that the audience are people who are working with have.
Yeah, and it's certainly become a smaller world in that sense.
Right.
Geography isn't nearly as important in some cases. In other cases, it is. But in a mentor situation where you can impart information, it may not be as necessary sometimes. And like you said, now you can. I'm sure in the past, even prior to the pandemic, years past, there was a lot of it was meeting in person, phone calls, but the ease of video communications now is certainly, I'm sure, helpful to mentoring.
It is.
You mentioned the diversity, and I like that. I want to just point out, reiterate what you just said about it being more than just a mentor. It's a mentor network, which I think is
Right.
really really great. Um, but let's touch on diversity a bit, because traditionally, especially over the last 20th century and things like that. But it's changing as we get more into so they say, but modern times. Um, it's always traditionally been older white guys volunteering for these types of things,
Yeah.
and that's not always beneficial to a wide variety of businesses. So how do you see SCORE adapting and changing there over the last few years?
Well, that would have been certainly true if you looked at the SCORE organization, say, 20 years ago, right? And I can speak a little more specifically to well, no, I can speak both specifically to Rhode Island and nationally, because I, of course, made a lot of contacts across the organization. So, um, uh, first of all, so yes, that would have been a very appropriate characterization 20 years ago. But a lot has changed in the last 20 years, right?
Sure.
And the
Yep.
first thing that has been wonderful is that women have gotten very involved. They see this, and you might say, I'm old enough that I remember when women were not that involved in business in general, right? And as women became more business involved in business, they then, as they grew into later years, would be in a position to do exactly the kind of things that the SCORE mentors do, right? So we're reaping the benefit, if you will, of women have now been involved in business for many decades, and we very large. I don't know. I don't have the number on the tip of my tongue,
No,
but I
yeah,
would
I didn't mean to.
say,
Yeah, didn't mean to feed give statistics, but I just
yeah,
just
but it's
generally, yeah.
close to half. Close to half of our team is women. Our I'm a co-chair this year. Last year, our co-chair was Rochelle Blees, who was one of the senior people in the organization. Some of my fellow marketing experts, if you will, mentors, are women. Um, I would say if there's one thing that we're still working on is we do have, uh, I think it's like three mentors who speak Spanish and are of Hispanic background. We'd like to see more of that. And we've made some efforts to try to diversify in that area. So that's one area that kind of that we have identified where we would like to grow, and we've done some reach out into the Hispanic community and the Hispanic networks to try to build off of that area. One other thing, and this isn't so much about the mentors, but just about the people we're working with, I'll mention from a diversity standpoint, is refugees, right?
Yeah.
There's a wonderful organization called Dorcas. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Yep.
and we've worked with them to try to help integrate those people into society. A lot of times they're starting from an even more basic level because they're having to, enter a whole new society and get started, and yet a lot of them come with experience or maybe cooking skills or interesting ethnic background that could be the basis for a business, and we can help them with that sort of things, even if it requires an interpreter, which I've done that personally a few times. So.
That is fantastic to hear. Yeah, Dorcas is an amazing organization. I just personally have experience. Beautiful Day is a company that has sold at some of my events and markets, and they're a group that makes granola products with refugee employees. So
Yeah,
yeah, there's lots of small businesses out there that fall into that realm of like you said, refugees or still any sort of immigrants, and I think, by nature, sometimes, it's almost funny to say, but if you're, you're working hard to, to move from one country to another, you almost have an entrepreneurial spirit built into yourself.
But what's the saying? Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
There you go. Yeah, yeah. So that's really great to hear. I'm glad to hear that. Um, for anyone out there watching this on Facebook Live right now, if you have a question for Jeff, you can put it right there in the comments, and we'll get to those in just a few minutes. I just have another question here. One of our members asked. Uh, he wanted to know, when you look at the businesses you work with,
Mhm.
y- unfortunately, some businesses do fail. I mean, we know
Yeah.
that's a reality. Where are areas do you think that SCORE could really help those that are struggling?
Well, I was asked a very interesting question by the head of the SBA recently along these lines. He says, "Do you ever tell people that they just shouldn't go ahead with this business? Because let's
Mm,
face it, young businesses do have a very modest success rate, right? Not all of them succeed, and only a small portion of them succeed, right? And people put a lot of their money, their effort, and blood into it. So you want to see them succeed. So they said. So he asked me, do you ever tell people no, you shouldn't do this? And I said, frankly, I don't, because I don't feel it's my role to tell people, yes, do this business, or no, don't do this business. What we do, or what I do, because this is a little more individual sort of situation, is I ask some very tough questions, right? Uh, okay, you think it's going to take this amount of money to do this? Have you thought about this, and this, right? Have you thought about how you're going to acquire those customers? Have you thought about how you're going to get that word of mouth out? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I'll be honest, when people really understand the full amount of effort that's required to make that happen, people have various different responses to that. Some double
sure.
down, and
Yeah.
some say, "Oh, okay, I see what I'm up against now." Right? A typical thing would be, for instance. Now, there are certain situations where I tell people, you just shouldn't do that. I had a guy who had an invention, and there was some company out there that wanted to, had pay him $25,000 so they could promote his invention, right? And I saw that after looking into it, it's just a way to get $25,000 out of the guy, right? And not really promote his invention, right? So, we will, in cases where we feel it's the wrong way to go, strongly urge them, what to do. Um, and then there's other situations where I would explain to somebody, you know, do you really have um, you know, do you have a differentiator here? Do you have a way, if you have something that has a certain amount of appeal, is it something that you is sustainable as a business, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
in other cases, we've had situations where the business model just doesn't work out, right? They just can't sell the product for enough money to make a business out of it. We've had situations where people just don't have enough funding to, when they look at all the money that's required to start up the business. So each one is different. There's certain patterns that you see, but there is a lot of variety out there. And then, of course, there are businesses that are wonderfully successful and start from almost nothing, right? We had a seminar recently where we highlighted what business I work with, a young woman who was a wedding planner, right? And she went into the pandemic, and you can imagine
Yeah.
weddings came to a grinding halt, right?
Yeah.
But we sat down and we noodled on this together, and she came up with it, although I helped facilitate the process. she came up with a concept of doing what she called micro weddings. What the idea was, you go to a bed and breakfast, you take over the entire bed and breakfast just with your immediate family. You do the wedding there, and then you video it out, stream it out to a wider audience, right? And that turned out to be hugely popular. And then some other things that she did. She now has several people working for her, and has been highlighted in various publications like Rhode Island Monthly, and so she's done very well.
It's a very nice success story. Yeah, absolutely. So, Ben or Jen, do we have any questions on Facebook Live for Jeff? Let's see what we got here. Hey, there's Jen. Okay.
That's my question, actually. Jeff, where can a small business sign up? Not everyone has internet, so besides the normal, search as Score Up, is there a number that they can call? And then how long does it take a small business to get matched with a mentor that suits them?
Yeah, so by far the easiest way is to go online to that website that David mentioned in the beginning, or just if Google Rhode Island Score, right, and it'll SCORE in capitals, and it'll take you to our website. And then there's a big button there, several big buttons that say request a mentor, and then you fill that in. That is the easiest way. There is a phone number. I don't happen to have that on the top of my head. If there is a way, David, you could get that phone number, I could get it to you right after this. What's that?
Trying to see if I can find it here.
Yeah, you might even be able to pull it up. And you can leave a message on that phone number. The match time is actually very quick. We are generally able to turn. First of all, it's a here's what happens. Your request goes in. There's an administrator who looks at your request and the mentor group, and sends it out to a person. Oh, I see David just posted the phone number. So thank you, David. That goes to this administrator that I was just telling you about. And then that person will reach out and to a mentor, and then the mentor will get back to you and with a suggestion as far as when you might meet. Our goal would certainly be within about 1 to 2 weeks to actually have our first meeting, which means that we would be getting back to you within the first week. Doesn't always happen like that, because you might have a mentor who's on vacation, or maybe the first mentor that the administrator reaches out to looks at and says, gee, I don't have the expertise that this person needs. So not always within a week that you would hear back, but I would say probably 80 to 90% of people hear back within 1 week.
Thank you. Thank you for covering for me there as I dropped out for a second. I was changing tabs too quickly and hit the wrong button.
Wait, I talked just long enough to cover you there.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jeff. So yeah, we had the ri.score.org and 401-226-0077 was on the screen there. You can,
thank you,
if you're
David.
watching this, you can back up after we've ended. You can back up and see that on the screen to get those numbers. This has been a great conversation, Jeff. I really appreciate it. I think it's been really educational for myself. So I hope it's been educational for all our listeners and viewers out there. Anything else you want to say in closing about Score?
No, just thank you. I've worked for a number of businesses in my career. I've worked for I've done some volunteering in some nonprofits, and Score, I have to say, just is a great organization. It's both enjoyable for, by the way, if there are any people out there who might consider themselves as possible mentors, I would wholeheartedly recommend the experience, and it's a very fulfilling. Just looking from our perspective, it's a very fulfilling activity, being able to help people, particularly people who are just trying to get off the ground to be successful. And so I give it the 2 thumbs up for sure. I've been there for about 3 years, and it's been a great 3 years.
It certainly sounds fulfilling. I thank you for that. So that's our show with Jeff today. Thank you very much to Jeff Bodenstab of SCORE. We really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. What a great opportunity. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, David.
You're welcome. And so there you go. There's another great episode. I hope that was as educational for you as it was for me, because I certainly did learn a lot about SCORE. And you can check out their website. As always, as you can see on the screen there, we are at the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition at rismallbusiness.org. Sign up for our newsletter there. We're expanding leaps and bounds every day. Truly, we've got a new portal coming. Lots of great things happening with the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition. So if you're a small business owner out there, any type of small business, doesn't matter. We want to be the voice for all small businesses across the state of Rhode Island. So please join up. And then coming up on our show here, we've got some fantastic guests in the next few weeks. Going along with the theme of business support organizations, we've got Doris De Los Santos from the Center of Women in Enterprise and Tomas Avila from the Rhode Island Office of Diversity, Equity, and Opportunity coming up. And then we've got we got Representative Blake Filippi and Representative Karen Alzate coming up. And then Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea is going to be on the show in May, along with Senator Jessica De La Cruz and Treasurer Seth Magaziner, who are both running for the United States Congress. So tune in every 2 weeks. Watch it after the fact on demand there on Facebook. Really appreciate you watching our show, and we'll see you next time. Take care.